Hey, Scott Jordan and Mark Warner here for Jancast number 116 for January 20th, 2022. That's right. We're almost through January. Whoa,
Yeah,
man.
that's fascinating. As is the number 116, Scott.
Oh yeah. Oh
That's pretty significant too, as the numbers climb.
Yep. And the viewers continue the view. So okay, well, let's get on with the show. We got some of the usual news, which is supply chain news. Is hey, good news. You can get anything you want. It just costs you a hell of a lot more. Excuse my language. A lot more than normal, right? What's up with that?
It is amazing how pricing has impacted almost everything we see, everything we touch, everything we eat.
Yep.
About the only thing I really have seen maybe stabilize a little bit was like cost of gas.
Yeah.
But food, all the raw materials involved in the cleaning industry and disinfectants and those tools and the equipment, they're all dealing with that. And I think a lot of that's directly related to, we talked about in a previous Jancast, all the variables that are impacting it, and the shipping freight seems to be a commonality, right? So everything that we're talking about going up, they're all being shipped.
Yeah, well,
great.
From a competitive standpoint, that makes a producer like Bullen in a good position because, well, kind of good and bad. And I can't compete necessarily that well going to Chicago or California because of the increased cost and freight to get stuff there. But then again, that means our competitors on the West Coast can't necessarily come to the East Coast. So it's regionalizing the business even more than it ever was before. So we'll see how that shakes out. But I don't think the transportation costs are going to come down significantly anytime soon.
The part of what's driving the transportation costs is the pure element of a labor shortage, shortage of drivers, which you can't change that overnight, no matter what, So I think that's something that's probably going to be a constant moving forward of, these escalated shipping costs, and they might climb again even further. But the idea of having advantages of working somewhat regionally come into play for not just our market, which is Jansan, but literally all kinds of things. I think even national grocery store chains and national department stores will probably be considering things like that as well.
Yeah, I don't know if actually, speaking of grocery store chains, we didn't have it on the agenda to talk about, but I don't know what's going on with the grocery stores. I thought maybe it was just me, but I was talking to my son Alex, and he noticed, and he goes shopping at a different grocery store chain than I do, and there's like no food in some of these stores. I understand maybe we had a little bit of bad weather this week that might have had something to do with it, but even at Costco there was multiple rack positions that were completely empty, and I've never seen that before. And just stuff that you would normally think would be in stock in the supermarkets is not. So, and I guess that has something to do with the whole trucking thing.
Yeah, uncharted waters we're going through, right?
Yeah. Well, talk about change. We've got, when this whole thing started, when the COVID thing started, we were all afraid that we were going to die, and we certainly are still worried about that. But to put a somewhat positive note on it, I'll tell you what's going on at Bullen is in the last week or so, last week and this week, we had about half of our office staff that experienced not feeling well, and our protocol is to, if you're not feeling well, stay home and hopefully get tested. And three people were out because of it. I guess the only good news is, and the same thing up on the plant, we had 2 or 3 people on the filling lines. Is the only good news is nobody passed away, nobody went in the hospital, and they've gone through the cycle, so they're now back in after 5 days. But we're now back to wearing masks, and let's make sure we're wearing the right mask. We all started out with gaiters and various kind of one-layer cloth things, handkerchiefs. Now they're saying, you really, with the new version, you really need a better quality mask. So Yeah, so a lot of changes here at Bullen. What are you seeing in the outside market there?
Well, the interesting thing was we went through a period of time last year, first half of last year, where we saw yeah, maybe 80, 90% of the folks that were out there were wearing masks. And then that declined, where
Yeah.
we went to the summer months and we got into fall and you started to see masks coming back, but not at the same level. But what I am definitely seeing out there is we hit things like uh, quick serve mini markets and so on, is that seeing more and more people not just wearing masks but wearing the kinds of masks that you're talking about, either a multi-layered kind of technical mask or KN95 disposable you know N95s, and that's what I'm seeing a lot more of. And what we're also seeing, and it's kind of worth talking about, is what's going on in the education sector with K through 12 and what the teachers are going through. And it's kind of difficult for them in a lot of different ways. And it's not just mask wearing, but I mean, even the rigors of having to teach class in this kind of setting is really, really challenging. There's a lot more work into it than people might see. In fact, even the retail sector, Scott, everything that they go through is about 10 times more rigorous than it may have used to been. It's not just like, hey, how's it going? Need anything today? It's become much more involved process, even at the retail level. So
and then you add in there, you got the Karen situation and the retail, and you probably don't see that much in our business here. Not like there's people coming in the front door ranting about stuff, but I pity the people in the retail environment, the airline people, the people in the restaurants. I mean, with everything else they got to deal with, and they got to put up with some nutcases that think they demand some different level of authority over that whole thing. So, man.
Yeah, so maybe we'll, convert into a society that's a little bit more forgiving and a little bit more patient and, understanding, because we're all going through the same thing. And so people that have that whole entitled mentality of the rules weren't made for me, maybe we'll find less and less of those moving forward.
Well, you remember back in the beginning of the whole thing, we did some articles, covered some articles that we saw about people selling bogus disinfectants. There's one in Texas where they had a stand on the side of the road, and they would fill up your bottle with some disinfectant guy, who knows what it was. A lot of fake stuff back then, which we reported, and we also put up on our website, what's it?
Germwashing.com.
That's right, germwashing.com. But so now the big thing, and it's probably going to be taken care of, but pop-up COVID test sites. So people have, like in minivans, put a banner out saying a rapid test here, and people are getting tested, and then they go on their way thinking they're going to get emailed the results in 15 minutes. And the next thing you know, whoever was running that operation on that corner, like where they're selling flowers at Easter, has moved on and took the money and doesn't even report any testing.
Well, the big tip off should have been cash only, please.
Yes. And they were just pulling a Q-tip out of a big box of Q-tips, right?
Right.
But you can report on the great news that actually in the last day or so, right?
Yeah, the need to have testing more available is been talked about quite a bit, like worldwide, and part of what happened in Europe to help them control some of the things that were going on there was to make testing more available widespread. And there was a big question, like, well, how can it be more available there than here in the United States? A lot of them are made here as well. So the United States government kind of jumped on this and said, we need to make these more available. So the big news is every household has the ability to get 4 free tests, which is great for households up to 4 people.
Well, I don't want to plug unnecessarily plug just one company, but if you're interested in getting hair growth and medication, maybe some stimulus medication as well, there's a company, Rogaine, who I personally have bought some kits. I thought, well, this is crazy. I mean, they said they'll be there in 2 to 3 days. They did charge a little bit more than normal, but just do a Google search, and that's another place you can get tests online. They usually come in 3 days or so. So I'm not plugging them, but it is one source, and I think it'll open up a lot too. But at least it's great. I mean, government's spending $4 billion on the first 500 million tests, right?
Well, I think, that kind of looks at some of the pattern changes for us in the future too. When you go back 6 months, the only reason you went to get a test is you either were not feeling well and you wanted to see if you're okay or whatever. And now people are starting to consider having tests part of their required carry-on luggage, because it becomes part of what you have to be able to document just to travel. So, it's kind of become a much higher level of importance, other than being reactionary to somebody not feeling well. It's proactively having kits ready in case they're necessary to pass borders or get on planes.
And that's why I purchased mine, because I'm hoping a trip that we've postponed now for over 2 years. I'm hoping to be going to a warmer climate in the near future, and figured can't hurt to have them in the bag, right?
That's absolutely right. And I think you're not necessarily referring to jumping on I-95 in Philadelphia and heading down to Baltimore, right?
No,
that's not. You're thinking further south.
That's not quite warm enough for me. But so let's put a positive note on all this, as we like to do. I think business is going to come around. It's already starting to, but you got some details on that, right, Mark?
Yeah, I actually do. I mean, the statistics are showing that people are starting to embrace the idea of extreme cleanliness. They're starting to source out the right kind of disinfectants. They're trying to take care of their facilities and portray that extreme cleanliness look that we've talked about in the past.
Trademark. I just got noticed, by the way, our trademark is official on extreme cleanliness. So don't anybody think they can use that.
Extreme cleanliness R.
Yeah.
So, that trend is actually in play, and a lot of the companies that do the analytical research, market research firms and so on, are looking at all that, saying, hey, guys, if you're involved with the Jansan industry, you're projected to grow $36 billion in the next half dozen years. $36 billion growth. I mean, there's industries in the world that their cumulative amount of volume over the last 10 years doesn't even add up to 36 billion. And this is the cleaning industry in general, and the expectation of a 36 billion with a B growth. That's outstanding.
Yeah, I'm feeling good about that. Yeah, let's bring it on. We're ready. We're ready. Well, it is winter, and it's time for the blatant product plug of the show, as we like to call it. We should have some music for that. And
that's next time.
Some graphics. But don't forget winter rinse, liquid ice melt, snowplow wax, all unique products that you can get from Bullen. We have them in stock. And why would you want to use something like winter rinse, Mark?
Well, it's an interesting question, and a lot of people don't realize that, in the cleaning industry in general, certainly in the Northeast and Northwest, we deal with a minimum of 4 different soil types. So we need to modify our cleaners to deal with those different soil types. Well, let me back up a little bit. One of those soil types is the soil we get in the summer, which is dry, loose soil. And you can vacuum that away, or you can dust mop it away. But you get into the fall and the spring, you're dealing with wet, muddy soils, and that requires a liquid cleaner to be able to, you can't vacuum away a mud stain, right? So, that comes into play, and a lot of people will use a cleaner, that liquid cleaner, year round in the Northeast and Northwest. However, that same cleaner that is normally used during those times, when it reacts to ice melt residue trekking, which is actually a mineral it's not just mud and dirt, it's a mineral. The traditional neutral cleaner, like you might use in the spring or fall, will actually tend to leave streaking. And that's a chemical reaction to the salts and the other ingredients in ice melt. So Winter Rinse is really a product that was modified. It's got some what's called chelates, the ability to help break down those minerals so that instead of allowing it to streak and having that chemical reaction, it eliminates the chemical reaction. So any little residual water that might be left behind after mopping or trail marks behind an auto scrubber, they're invisible. So instead of having those marks, they're gone. And that's what makes Winter Rinse so fascinating.
Yep. Well, excellent info there, Mark. Thank you. Okay, well, that's our show for this segment, and we have our next show coming up on February 3rd. Is that right?
February 3rd, day before
February 3rd.
the Winter Olympics start in Beijing.
That's right. That's right. And we will be making some show changes coming up, probably not on that particular one, but going forward, we're going to change it up a little bit. We're going to do some live episodes so that we can actually have call-ins and have question and answers with the audience out there. We're going to have some guests. We've got some really interesting stuff coming up with some 3D training where you go into a restroom, and if you look to your right and see a sink or something, a little thing will pop up. So we're going to get into some high-tech stuff going forward. So we're going to spice up the Jancast going forward for future shows. But the next one's February 3rd, and stay tuned for that one. And thanks for tuning in.
Thanks, everybody.
Okay, see y'all.